In Catawba, North Carolina, there's a shop. It's unassuming on the outside, right at home in this historic town next to Lake Norman. You might think it's typical of most shops until you step inside and meet the people who work there.
Well, here's exactly what happened. I got off into a little ravine there, and we snapped that part off, which makes us go forward. And we ended up driving it out on front wheel drive because when the pinion snapped, it jammed itself into the ring gear, so we had to tear it all apart.
There's a deep racing history in North Carolina, and in this shop, Aaron and his partners build the fastest cars on the track with 7 land speed records to prove it, and they build the toughest expedition vehicles off the grid. It takes a team and a broad set of skills to build a race or expedition vehicle, so we'll meet Aaron and some of his partners that make it happen. Now there's a wait list for one-of-a-kind builds, but Aaron says the garage shop makes exceptions for cars that actually get used.
Sam!
You want me to do it?
We'll lay down.
Hey guys, I'm here with Aaron of the garage shop. We're in his shop, and just walking around here and taking a look around. It's freaking amazing. And how did this come to be? Maybe, you know, before we get into some of the stories about SEMA Expedition and stuff, how did you get into building the shop, and give us a little history?
Long story short, I got out of the Navy. My dad threw me out of the house and said, you might want to go to North Carolina and work on race cars. I had no idea what that meant. But I did what my dad told me.
Yeah.
And so I came down in 92, 93, and was lucky enough to work with some really talented people. And at that time, got to do a little bit of everything on the teams. You know, one day you might be fabricating, the next day you might be making crush panels, the next day you might be helping hang a body. So I got to work on teams. I got to do a multitude of different things, and you know, as the years went by and my career got better, and I worked for some better teams, and things started going well until until the NASCAR decided they were going to make this car of tomorrow, which is kind of like a snap type model, and that did not envelop my passion to want to race anymore. And a friend of mine from upstate New York called me and he said, hey, Indianapolis Motor Speedway is going to have a vintage race. I said, well, what is that? And he's, well, they're going to take vintage cars and they're going to race them around the track. I said, the big track? No, the road course. Oh, they have a road course. And I didn't even know.
Right.
I didn't pay attention anymore. He said, would you be interested in building me a car? Yeah, you know, it sounds like a good time. So we acquired an old Dodge Evernham car from, I think it was a 01 or an 02, and we kind of updated it, and I did some things that I learned, you know, while we were racing. And through that, we went to Indy, and I'm like, man, this is fun. And we won the race, and it was like, well, that was easy. And through that, I met a couple other guys, and they're like, hey, would you work on my cars? And I'm like, yeah, I'm really enjoying this. So we did that, but in 2007, we took a car to Bonneville for Dodge, and we set a land speed record for the world's fastest NASCAR stock car, which Bobby Isaac and the number 71 Wing K&K Dodge, he set that first, and then a guy from California come in 20 years later, and we came back a year later and broke his record by 20 miles an hour. And that was another fire that kind of lighted, but nobody ever broke our record even until this day in the NASCAR stock car class. And we set that at 244.9 average two ways. So kind of had a bug there for the land speed racing, but I'm not going to go race myself. It's not fun. And so we decided one evening, a couple of my friends were over at the shop, and we had, through doing these NASCAR restorations, all these parts and pieces and engines and all this stuff. I said, well, let's build something out of that and go land speed racing. And that's when the 39 Ford was, you know, our truck was born. And we took that to a couple ECTA events at the Ohio Mile. We set 7 records with it at over 200 miles an hour. in the gas real street class with a 358 cubic inch motor. You know, we set records in the open AA class, unlimited cubic inches. You know, got no nitrous, no turbos. You know, old school carburetor, and we were successful with that. So at the point we decided to do that, I said, when we become successful at the Ohio Mile, we're going to go to Bonneville. I didn't realize that success was going to come quickly. In the meanwhile, the land speed truck went to SEMA. It was invited out by a company, and we displayed it out there. And it was the first time I ever been to SEMA in 2015. And so I'm sitting there with a couple people, and we're having a beer. It's late in the afternoon and setup day. And here comes this Jeep with saran wrap on the tires and guys in white gloves pushing it. I just like, what is this?
Right.
What are we doing here?
Right.
This is not what we do. It's not we use what we build.
Right.
And I mean, it's neat, it's cool, but pushing a Jeep with saran wrap on the tires and white gloves, it kind of lit another little fire. And I knew we couldn't go to Bonneville with the truck because of the situation there for, you know, that time being. So I looked at the people I was with and I said, I'm going to go home, I'm going to build my FJ40, and I'm going to drive it to SEMA off-road on this Trans-America Trail. I read about it on the internet. It's got to work. So then at that point, they kind of, you know, I'm like, that even made me more mad.
Yeah, sure you are.
Yeah, okay, you don't think that's a good idea? I'll show you how good an idea it is.
Right.
And so then I went and I talked to a good friend of mine from racingjunk.com, Jim Sweener, and we had dinner and just kind of casually talked about the idea. And he said, "That's a really good idea. We'd be behind that. We would be interested in that."
Cool.
Okay, so now we're getting somewhere. I called my best friend Ed because he's an old school off-roader. I mean, he's the one that's taught us so much about what we do, and he's majorly responsible for all the navigation and mechanics. I mean, he's just one of those guys that he's hardcore and he gets the job done. Mm-hmm. So I call Ed and I said, Ed, I got this idea. We're going to drive the truck we're going to fix up the FJ. We're going to drive it to SEMA off-road. That's a good idea. When do we start? So then I knew, so now I got two people that think it's a good idea. I got two. I'm 2 for 2. Yeah. And what the other people said is still pissing me off because I think it's a good idea, and you made fun of it. So yeah, that's just lighting the fire. Yeah. So I get back, and I talked to a friend of mine that was doing that does some social media stuff for us, and I said, "Listen, this is the idea. You got till March 15th to try to put together a program with some of these companies." March 15th come, I open my computer, I see a press release that we're doing this.
This is a surprise.
This is a surprise.
Yeah.
It's like a big surprise. I mean, we had a meeting every week about it, and this is still a surprise.
Yeah.
And so I call him up, and I said, "What's the deal? You know, are we good?" "Yeah, I got you a winch." I'm like, "What?" So he said, "Yeah, this company named Mile Marker, they thought it was a great idea." So instantly, now we got 3 people that thinks it's a great idea.
Yeah.
And so Mile Marker winches came on board. Mm-hmm. And really, in the inception of this idea, it's kind of crazy. You know, you got a show that's filled with vehicles that are polished and you can't touch, and we're going to drive a 40-year-old truck across the United States in the dirt to SEMA and then display it in the racingjunk.com booth. It doesn't, when you tell people this, they're like, well, first of all, are you going to make it? You know, are we going to put my products on your truck and you're going to fail? There's risk. Mm-hmm. There's a huge risk. And it's not like you're doing it in a new Jeep JK or Raptor or anything. I mean, it's a 40-year-old truck that we hadn't built yet. So at that point, I'm like, well, we better start working on this truck. It needed frame up, everything. And we did do everything that first year. At that point, we had 4 or 5 months to get ready for the trip. I was traveling back and forth to Europe with my racing customers, European customers in Europe, going back and forth, and had a couple guys here working on it. I got back from Europe 2 weeks before we were going to leave, October 1st, from Murphy, North Carolina on the TAT. And I get back and the truck's not done. Like, it's 90% done, but important stuff like all the wiring.
How much time do you have?
2 weeks to get it done. So I called Steve Hogue. I had another guy doing my wiring, and I called Steve Hogue, and he came over, and he was just kind of like, oh, this is pretty interesting. It took us him and I, about 2 weeks to get the truck finished. Mm-hmm. You know, it wasn't, we weren't in a panic or anything. It just, you know, every day solid. It was that close to being done and getting it packed. And, you know, Ed flies in and we pack it. And Ed looked at me, he goes, you test drive it? Yeah, I went to the restaurant and got lunch. He's like, well, you think we should test drive it? Yeah, let's go back to the restaurant and get lunch. So we did. That was our test drive.
Yeah.
And, 2 days after Ed got here, we went to Murphy, North Carolina and left on the TAT. We did, that was 2016. And we did about 5,000 miles, a little over 5,000 miles. Wow. In 30 days on the TAT. We didn't really like the way the TAT was mapped, and there was certain things that we wanted to see and show people that are, you know, out there, the mines and the really backcountry ghost towns and things like that. So, you know, we decided to reroute. You know, we hit the Pony Express Trail, we got on a California trail, we did a little bit of the Oregon Trail, and, you know, some rail stuff out there and stuff like that.
Was that a trek to SEMA? Was that the first year?
That was the first year.
5,000 miles to SEMA and then back again.
Yeah. And we had 0 mechanical failures.
Wow.
0. And that, I'm lucky enough to get to drive it. Ed's lucky enough to get to ride in it. But yeah. 0 mechanical failures is really a testament to the people that came on board with this project early mm-hmm. on and said, you know, like, this is what we're going to do. Yeah. This is how we're going to do it. And they took a passion in it. And we had 0 failures in 5,000 miles with a truck we drove 10 miles after completely rebuilding it.
Wow. Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
You know, I was even kind of amazed, you mm-hmm. know. I mean, even, you know, Steve would call and say, like, how's everything going? Good. No problems. Everything good? Yep, everything's great. You know, and my friend Bob Bowser, he would call and, hey, you guys okay? Yeah, everything's great. Everything, you know, it was, we were alone on that trip. And that was a whole different perspective. Mm-hmm. Looking back on it, might not have been the smartest move, but I wanted to prove a point. Mm-hmm. So we get to SEMA, successful trip. The truck's displayed in racingjunk.com booth. And the first day of the show, I'm just like, get a text to this link to MSN News. The FJ's on the front page of MSN News as best vehicles to SEMA. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty neat. Unexpected. That's cool. That's pretty cool. And so we're standing there at 7 o'clock in the morning, and your show starts at 8. At 7:05, Drew Patey walks up. And he's, you know, the marketing director, motorsports director of Safety Clean, Performance Plus Motor Oils, yep. and, you know, parent companies, Clean Harbors. So Drew says that was cool. And they were on board the first year. You know, mm-hmm. we ran their products and stuff, but there was a handshake. Yeah. He said, we're going to do this again next year. I'm like, we just got here. So he said, we're going to work it out and we're going to do something again next year. I said, perfect. So at that point, we had a basis for the following year, and we were going to do it again. Mm-hmm. Performance Plus was going to display it in their booth. And so at that point, we had a real tangible program that we could go out, you know, and talk to Joe Gomez from Aturo Tires and Mark and from Ultra Wheels. And we changed our wheel and tire package because we wanted to be with companies that we believe in their product. Because I'd rather buy something that I know is not going to fail than to use something that I'm worried about.
Right.
And we're very picky about the companies that we work with on this program for that very reason.
Well, the way you run your,
it's hard.
Yeah, you run it hard, and you're using that thing. You can't afford to have a failure.
Yeah, and that's always been, you know, our motto. At that point after Seaman, we had to come up with, what do we do now? Because we don't know. I mean, what can we do that's going to, we kind of built a base off bringing history back to life and visiting, you know, the mines and stuff. And I think it was Buddy Judy from Performance Plus and Drew Patey. Buddy sent me a map that was like a lap of America. And I'm like, that's cool. Yeah. You know, and then, you know, and we got Drew and Buddy and us, we got to talking, and I think Drew popped up and said, well, what about the Oregon Trail? We have a branch in Independence, Missouri, where the original Oregon Trail starts, like 2 miles from there. No problem, Drew.
Yeah.
This
cool.
Sounds good. So basically, we did a lot of research, and Ed did a phenomenal job of mapping the actual Oregon Trail. An absolutely phenomenal job. And what I learned last year, you think the Oregon Trail and you think like one trail. It just goes that way and you get off in Oregon and you're done. That's so wrong. There is so many offshoots to that trail and so many options, through, the 75, 80 years that it was used. There's the Jim Bridger, you got the California Trail, you got the Pony Express Trail runs with it, the Mormon Pioneer Trail runs with it. So everybody had their own idea how to get there, and it's a giant spider web of how to do it. So you have the main trail and hundreds of offshoots.
And you have to piece it together and make a choice.
You had to piece it together, and we went up through, we left Missouri, in the FJ, we got up through Nebraska, cut across Nebraska, come into Wyoming, and, following the Platte. And I'm like, man, following the Platte's difficult because anywhere out there you have water, you're going to have people. And we really stayed hardcore on the dirt. I mean, I think that whole trip last year was 3,800 miles. We might have had 200 on asphalt.
That's impressive.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And one of the things, I'm like, Ed, he said, well, there's this Bridger cutoff that went up through the mountains and went down to Fort Bridger. I said, let's do that. let's get away from this river. And we did, and it was just phenomenal. And we got up in there, and that's where, the Mormon Trail and the Bridger run together there. And we got up in there, and just to think, I mean, some of those people dragging those, like the Mormons in the handcarts, and walking across that, and out there where they had 27 people were killed. There was nowhere to go, and the weather came in. It was late October, and they died.
Yeah.
And we went up through that valley where they went, and up over Rocky Ridge and Sweetwater Pass, and it's really humbling.
Yeah.
To think that somebody wants to better themselves so much that they do this. But the wagon trail, you can still see the one wagon trail coming down the draw, and at the bottom it fanned out. It looked like a railroad yard.
Wow.
I mean, there was probably 40 wide. And those marks are still there, and for as far as you can see, and that's when it's like, man, these people were hardcore.
What would you say about, with your experience now? You've trekked about quite a bit. Some folks would say that you can't pioneer in America anymore. It's hard to explore in America anymore. In your experience, in this piece, what do you think about that?
I think that's absolutely false. I mean, Ed and I every year, Ed does all the navigation, and he is all about going where no man's gone before, like Star Trek. Sometimes we got to reel him in a little bit, but Ed's personality is, we can go over that mountain, and I'm looking at it like, in what, an airplane? So we're a good pair.
Yeah.
But that's absolutely false. I mean, there's so many things out there that haven't been seen in so many years.
Yeah.
You just got to do your research, and you got to get out there and do it to find it. Behind us, Ed and I, and the FJ, there's just a huge team of people and resources. it starts here in the shop, and these guys seen what we've done over the last few years, and we come back and we talk about it. It's no different than if we're racing a car. This did not work. We need to do something different, and we've had that through the years, and we've evolved,
right,
and changed a lot of systems and stuff from the first year until this year's trip that we're doing this year. A lot's been changed, suspension and some electrical things, and and just made more durable, more user friendly. Because when we're doing a 30-day trip and it's 5,000 miles, if it takes an hour to deploy your campsite, that's 30 hours over the course of 30 days. And that's 3 days of wheeling in daytime to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, we like things that deploy quickly. 15 minutes, our camp set up and we're cooking.
What's going on this year? You guys are about to take off here any day now. You're about to leave.
Yeah.
Tell us what's coming up here.
Well, at the end of last year, we got the truck in the booth, and it was a big success. I was surprised. Okay, it's the second time we've done this, but the program grew, and it grew naturally. We didn't really promote it massively. We have a lot of friends and families, and guys that work in the shop, their friends and families that follow it, and people we've met at events and stuff. We do events for PBR. They're one of our partners on this truck for Pabst Blue Ribbon. So getting out there and meeting those people at other events and telling them what we're doing, that kind of they naturally just follow along, and I really appreciate that aspect of it, that people care to follow along to see what we're seeing, and that's what I want them to see.
Right.
It's not about the truck, it's not about Ed and I, it's about American history and where we came from as a country. Ed and I really enjoy that.
Yeah.
And it's very humbling when you get up, in Nevada, and you get 8, 9, 10,000 feet, and there's these mines up there with this massive equipment. Like, how did you get this here? We barely got up here in that.
Right.
So it's real humbling. So we decided, we talked to, Drew Patey again, and we looked at a couple different things. The Butterfield Trail is a great trail. It's very interesting, but the Oregon Trail kind of overshadows it. So we felt we kind of dove in on the Oregon Trail and did the biggest one first.
Yeah.
And, we've been on the California Trail and the Pony Express Trail. We've done, Mormon Trail. So we've done all, the big ones. And so what we decided, we've run east to west twice now, and the Trans-America Trail and Oregon Trail. So we said, well, let's go from Canada to Mexico. So we started looking and found there's a CDT, the Continental Divide Trail, but it's a hiking trail. So I talked to Ed and I said, can you map this? He goes, yeah, we could do it. It's been done, we can do it in our own style. And Ed basically breaks out paper maps and starts looking for all those little mine things. And I swear to God, he just mine. And we just do this all the way down through the country, which is great.
Yeah.
I love it. This, because every day we have a destination.
Yeah.
There's something cool every day that you're going to see through the windshield. And, Ed does a phenomenal job with that. So we decided to do the Continental Divide. And we're going to start in Trail Creek Crossings, an abandoned border station on the Canadian-American border. It's just west of Glacier National Park. And we're going to start there. And we're going to go all the way to Hitacha Peak, New Mexico, which is the end of the CDT on the Mexican border in New Mexico. And then from there, we're going to go through Arizona. Ed's found these concrete arrows that they used to use for aviation direction, and he's mapped a few of those out through Arizona. So we're going to go try to find a few of these arrows.
Cool.
And General Patton had a tank training camp. There's an abandoned tank training camp for the 3rd Army.
Cool.
Down there. So we're going to go see that. And then we'll make our way to Las Vegas, where the Raptor will be displayed in front of the off-road hall, presented by Aturo Tires. And then again this year, the FJ will be in the Performance Plus booth with Safety Clean. And also on Tuesday of SEMA from 9 to 10, Richard Petty's going to come spend an hour with us in Performance Plus. And
that's awesome.
That'll be a lot of fun to be around him and his fan base.
Yeah. Right on. Hey, an absolutely awesome build, of course. I look forward to we'll do a walk around. We're going to do a walk around. We'll get into the details of the FJ. here in a day or so. And totally inspiring story. Thank you for spending the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for being here.